Midnight McDonald's. This happened about a year ago, in my first semester of college. I went to art school in NYC, and my suitemates and I had a craving for fast food at around 12:30 a.m. We decided on the McDonald's down the street because we're classy as fuck. It was me, my suitemate Kat, and her boyfriend Tom. We ordered our food. Kat and I decided to split a shit ton of chicken nuggets and pick a table by the door. Tom and Kat are sitting next to each other, holding hands as couples do, and I'm sitting there being the awkward third wheel and gorging myself on nuggets. In walks a slightly disheveled gentleman who starts to wander aimlessly in the direction of the register. We think nothing of him. I watch as he goes to order his food and turn back to my friends to chat. Suddenly, Kat mutters, "Anna, behind you." So I turn around and there's a slightly disheveled gentleman again. This time he's holding a flashlight. I turn back around to Kat and shrug, figuring it's just some harmless weirdo. I feel a tap on my shoulder, so I turn around again and the guy asks, "The light isn't working in the men's room. Can one of you hold this flashlight while I use the toilet?" Seriously? Kat, being the nicest and most outgoing person of the group, responds first. "Maybe you should tell an employee that the lights don't work. I bet they could figure it out for you." It'll only be a minute," the guy mutters and holds the flashlight out to us. "Could one of you just hold on to this while I pee?" he insisted. Tom answered next, as I was determined to ignore the man. "No, just go ask an employee to fix the lights." "But I'll only be," the man began again, but I interrupted him with a firm, "Fuck off." It was a weird situation, made only weirder when, as we were leaving, Kat said, "He never went into the bathroom in the first place. How would he know the lights didn't work?" Closing shift. As I've talked about in a few other posts, if anyone ever digs into my post history, I worked in fast food during high school and when I started college. I was a fairly small 18-year-old girl at the time, and I was scheduled to close the restaurant that night at midnight. We had been particularly dead, and labor cost was pretty high, so at about 9:30, I was the only one left up in the front, while my manager took drive-thru orders and money. So around 9:30ish, this guy walks in, wearing really nice designer clothing, including a brand new looking Aeropostale jacket with the hood up, pressed khaki shorts, and sunglasses. He keeps all of this on as he sits down at the bar-style seats at the end of the counter. This raises immediate red flags for me because, being dark outside, I feel like the guy is keeping his sunglasses on and hood up to obstruct my view and the camera's view of his face. I hesitantly stand there, unsure of what to do. I pretend to be busy and wait for him to say something. Sure enough, in a few minutes, he's behind me at the counter. "Excuse me, ma'am, but what could you give to me?" "I'm sorry?" "You know, when the food expires, I know it's not really bad, but could you give me something?" This guy still has not taken off the glasses when he speaks. He does so slowly. When he opens his mouth to talk, I notice he is missing most of his teeth, despite the fact that he is still a very young man. I'm sorry, I can't. My manager needs everything to count the waste products. I can get you a glass of water." He accepts, half smirking. I hand him the water cup and dip behind the grill to find my manager. She seems thoroughly unconcerned and told me to go back up front and to get to work. Uneasy, I oblige. I continue to busy myself up front as I see the guy sitting there at the counter again, sipping water and watching me behind his sunglasses. I duck back onto the side of the grill, not visible from the counter, and pull out my phone to text my boyfriend and father, both of whom live close by, trying to get someone out to keep an eye on the situation. I'm one word into my first text when my manager clears her throat behind me. I turn around and she has her hand out, waiting for me to put the phone in it. I'm trying to get someone out here to make sure nothing happens. I'm scared. You're fine. Give me the phone. You can have it back for music when the restaurant closes. Helpless, I surrender my phone and the only chance for rescue I had. I come back to the front and he sits there for a while, staring with a half-weird smile on his face. About 11:30, he gets up and walks out. Relieved, I go on with my closing duties and forget about him. We close and get ready to leave the restaurant. I didn't have a car of my own, so my boyfriend would come to pick me up at around 12:30 in the morning. As I step onto the sidewalk, from around the corner of the building, I saw movement headed my direction, and I quickly jumped into my boyfriend's car. As soon as I touched the door handle, the movement immediately changed directions and headed the opposite way. I locked my car door, realizing who the person in the shadows was and what the intention was. It was the same guy that had sat in the lobby earlier watching me. I fully believe he intended to wait for me and follow me out to my car, believing I had driven myself. I told my boyfriend to step on it. British Grandpa. I work at a McDonald's as a drive-thru presenter, and our small store gets a lot of different customers. We get a lot of drunks, high people with munchies, bored people looking to piss people off, seeing us as an easy target, even some travelers from other countries now and again. But I think that out of all of them, there is one that I will never forget. That person is a man I had named my British Grandpa. I met him around 5 p.m. one day, right as I started my night shift. I was super pissed off that day because every customer I had been a total dick, mostly plant workers wanting to take off their bad day on me, and had just about had enough of it when I went to hand out a giant order to someone, and instead of taking it, they decided to drive off without their food. I was really stressed and pissed about it, so the words, "Oh my god, really?" came out of my mouth. This is great. Now they'll probably call and blame it all on me. Flew out of my mouth uncontrollably and out the window right as an older man with white, slick back hair pulled up in a white truck. I heard comforting words come from him, pulling me out of my rage. It's alright. You know, you can please some people, but you can't please them all. That's what I always say. I smiled immediately and was pleasantly surprised by his British accent. We usually never get visitors from the UK. I thanked him and handed his order. He told me I had a beautiful smile and drove off with a wave goodbye. I'm a bit embarrassed to say, but the guy kinda made my entire day better. Every time I did complain about lateness or a mistake I had made, I just repeated his quote in my head, and it really worked for me. From that day on, he started coming by every other day around 5, right as my shift started, and would always tell me lovely things and complimented me on my smile and my features. I sometimes give regulars nicknames that I address them as to my coworkers, and this one was known as British Grandpa because he was always so sweet and was kind of like the grandpa I never had. Though, I did think it was kind of funny that he would come by almost every day after 2 whole months. If he was a traveler, wouldn't he have to go back home soon? The thought kind of made me sad, until one day, things started to make a lot more sense. I had just started working, and British Grandpa came through the drive-thru at 5 as usual, and waved with a familiar, "Hey, pretty girl." I was happy to see him, so I excitedly asked how his day had been. But it didn't hit me until he said, "Oh, it was great. I hope you're doing well today." That British Grandpa no longer had a British accent. I was perplexed, but decided to ignore it and carry on conversation until his order came. And when it did, he waved goodbye with a smile, as if nothing was off at all. I later told my boyfriend about it, who said he probably had gone senile or might have a slight case of dementia. I thought that would have been a good enough explanation to why British Grandpa had lost his accent and brushed it off as nothing. But nothing would have prepared me for what had happened a few days later. 5 o'clock rolled around, and I was in the window as always. And not so British Grandpa came along as always, but today was different. He wasn't as giddy as he always was before, and when I greeted him, he just sort of grunted with a head gesture as he stared at me intently. Must have had a bad day, I thought, and turned around to wait for his order to arrive. But even with my back turned, I could still feel his eyes closely examining me. It was pretty unnerving. When his order came, I turned to give it to him and wish him a nice night. But he cut me off right before I could speak and said, "You know, I've been thinking of ways to fit you in the back of this truck," with his eyes locked on mine. Genuinely freaked the fuck out, I sort of tossed a bag into his truck, stammered, "Have a nice night," and slammed the window closed. He drove off seconds later. Since then, I've switched my schedule to start at 6 o'clock, and I haven't heard from him since. But I always get a little anxious if I ever see a white truck. Demented, not so British Grandpa. Let's never meet again.